So I'm not sure if I got my email back to Chris kind of late. So if you're watching this later, I'm just waiting for him to join. But I'm going to, before he gets here, once again lay out the issues. Let's see if I got it on here. Try this again. Shoot. Okay, I'll just do this. I know this can work good if I use it for like displaying stuff and using it as like a whiteboard. Just got to get better at using it. But to help it kind of myself get better at explaining things and trying to give it kind of a cue or guide or whatever to the what I'm trying to say. So let me get this pasted here. I think this might help. I know people are gonna just believe what they're gonna believe, and that's fine. I don't think it's fine, but that's okay. I can deal with it. Gotta love people where they're at, where you're at. Understand you could be wrong. Let's see. Oh, okay. There we go. Let's see if that'll work. Okay. I gotta share this. Forgive me for the delay. Oh shucks. Okay, let me see. So I'm just waiting to see if Chris pops in. He might not because I got back to him kind of late and I didn't have the thing, the stream posted for very long. So it's my fault. But we'll see. We talked a lot last night on his channel, and I said a lot of stuff, and it was probably annoying. Why is that not working? Let's try it one more time. Come on. Gee whiz. Okay, there we go. All right. Oh, that's not going to work. There we go. Zoom out. That's funny. Somehow I twisted it. Okay. Give this a shot. See if I can share this whiteboard screen. Show the text. Hey, what's up, man? Oh, Steven, okay. Yeah, no hard feelings. I didn't mean anything disrespectful by it. I actually think Steven Anderson has a lot of good teaching and he's very biblical, believe it or not. if you wanted if you want to join and talk, that would be fun, but I understand if you don't. Um, I'll just lay out some of the things I'll try to illustrate what I'm thinking better because I know I don't explain things very well all the time. All right, see if this works. I don't know how I got this thing tilted. Let's try that again. Talking to Chris, who appears he agrees with Standing for Truth, who's in the live chat. Oh, shucks. You see that on this? Is it on the screen? Okay, good. Yeah, I was like, so I think that might have helped me a little bit understand the position a little better. It's hard because when you might say one thing and like someone else has a different view, right? Like, oh, shucks, why does it keep doing pasting that? You see things in a certain angle and then like you're talking past each other. And so like you'll hear somebody say something and like you'll think they're just crazy or saying something stupid because you're thinking it in a certain way. And like, then you just like kind of jump to these conclusions that the person's like being dishonest or you're just not getting it. I mean that in both directions, but okay, there we go. I know this can work as a neat program for this, but I've tried it before and it didn't work out very well. So let's see if I can zoom in on that. It's a little more probably, huh? Sorry, I'm pretty tired, so hopefully I worked a long day today at work. All right, so where was I going to start here? Jesus. Let's go with blue. Okay, it's big. Okay. So I think that one of the main differences between our views, between my view and the other, we're both premillennial, both post-trib. I'm not exactly sure how to like describe it, the differences, because when I first heard the view from Standing for Truth's view, I felt like it was, and from Steven Anderson in the past, which I didn't remember very well. It seemed like, I mean, I knew it wasn't post or pre-trib, but when I used to think, or from what I knew or understood about what the issues were with pre-trib, although I agree with most of the issues that are mentioned by people who have a slightly different post-trib view, it felt like that version of post-trib was still had the same issues that I was concerned with on from my perspective. That is regarding the amount, or because this all ties in, of course, to the second coming, right? Daniel, believe it or not, the last verse here. I felt like that view still made the mistake of putting the 70th week in the future and then having to try to organize all the texts regarding the second coming and the rapture or the tribulation. It still had those issues, which made the same mistakes, I guess I would say. And that is dealing with where do you put the 70th week and how do you organize the resurrection? I think I understand. I don't know what I should call the view. I'm not going to just call it your view or his view. I just mean this. I guess I'll call it the Baptist post-trib or something. I know that's not necessarily everybody agrees, but we'll call it Donnie's view or something. So here's one of the main things I've noticed this about the way commonly like that view Donnie's view will read scripture, which I don't really have a problem with in most cases, which is like very strained in comparison that you read text. Like it's just, which is reasonable. It's like, one line after the other, very chronological, which is just obvious, right, to do. But I think it's good to be aware, potentially anyways, right, of it not always being so chronological. Now, I think whenever you can, you should read it that way. But then, what are the signs that were, that's not necessarily the case. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to kind of lay out the way, just to try to help illustrate the way I see this is not being a strictly chronological, like linearly chronological in time. Rather, it's more concerned with the subject matter, and some people might think it's like out of order or something, but which may seem as like kind of confused and being like difficult or whatever. So, which I get. I don't know why there's not a colon there. That's weird. There should be. I thought there was a colon right there, but anyway. So I take these as being everything in blue as being. Let's see. Sorry, I'm a little slow with this. So we'll call this, Messiah, M for Messiah. And then everybody agrees that this one's Messiah, right? So I'm just saying, look, this is a parallelism because they're parallel in this sense. It just means like repeated, right? So everything after is also on the same subject. So everything in yellow is talking about the outcome of what happens. And then the subject, let's go back to blue. So in other words, what is the context? Okay. Verse 25 is really important. Of course, everybody agrees that's the Messiah as well. Now, obviously, this Messiah here, I guess let's try this. Same one. And then the question is right here, this guy. What is the antecedent to the he here? There's like essentially, if you take the options on the table of the different views, they would say it was this guy right here. I'm going to try to describe this problem better, more succinctly. I should have grabbed something to share here, but from English grammar. But yeah. Oh, hey, you're there. Okay, good. Hey, what's up, man? How you doing? I don't know what Chris. I guess Chris didn't get my email in time, so I felt bad.
I'll be your Chris for a bit. What's going on?
Okay, yeah. So you tell me where I'm wrong. I'm going to kind of try to steelman your view here as best I can.
Actually, before you do,
yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
One kind of correction.
Yeah, good.
Because you'd be considered strict post-tribulation rapture. I would be considered what I believe is the biblical position, the pre-wrath position, because the problem post-tribulation proponents, I think like yourself have, is firstly, you don't recognize the two-part chronology to Revelation, where you have a perfect chronology from Revelation 1 to 11, and then a perfect chronology from 12 to 22, where we have tribulation, rapture, wrath. And from my understanding, of course, correct me if I'm wrong, and I do believe it's sloppy, so apologies ahead of time, this idea that the trumpets, vials, and seals all happen before the rapture makes zero sense, because Revelation is filled with phrases such as after this, after these things. That's indicating a chronology. And that's exactly what we see from Revelation 6, which is the tribulation, correlates with Matthew 24. Then we have Revelation 7, the great multitude that no man could number, appearing in heaven instantaneously. And we know that they appeared in heaven instantaneously because the question is asked, where did these people come from? I mean, they just showed up. So they weren't there previously. Like the pre-tribbers want to say, no, they just got there. Okay, so this makes sense that this would be the rapture, especially considering the fact that it occurred right after the sun and moon are darkened. And that's where we see Jesus coming in the clouds in Matthew 24 together as elect, right? So right after that, in perfect chronology, we see the 144,000 sealed, okay, to act as a witness basically on this earth while God pours out his wrath. And then in Revelation 8, God's wrath begins, and it literally talks about how it's after these things. After what? Well, after the great multitude, after the sun and moon were darkened, after the seals have been opened, the tribulation. Revelation 6, at the end of it, of course I could be sharing a screen, but for sake of time I won't. It talks about how the great day of his wrath is come or has come. So it's now here.
I'm going to pull up Revelation real quick and then
Yep.
keep going.
So
I'm going to try to take notes on what you're saying so I can refer to it and consider what you're saying.
Here, you know what? I'll share my screen real quick since I'm going over it, and then you take as much time as you want to critique it, because I think this is an aspect of Daniel's 70 weeks that we're not. If you could share my screen real quick, I'll show you a chart, Jamie, and then
I can think of one question I have from what you said, but I'll wait till you're done.
Okay. I just want to show a visual to you, and then we can. Okay. So here's what we see in terms of the basically sequence of events, right? We got 42 months. We've got 3.5 years, 1,260 days, 1,290 days. I mean, over and over again, we see these numbers basically telling us we're dealing with 7 years here. So notice how this is a perfect chronology. Seals, Antichrist, World War, food famine, the Great Tribulation occurs at the abomination of desolation. And then that's where the time is cut short for the elect's sake. These days should be shortened. Then we see the rapture, right where we would expect sun and moon are darkened.
Is that where you get the 75 days off of the 1335 to 1260?
Right. If you just minus, because if you start the 1335, for example, here's a better chart. So you have the 1335, blessed is he that waiteth, okay, to the resurrection. That's what we're all waiting for, is the redemption of our bodies. Start that at the beginning of the week. I see no
That's
reason.
in Daniel 12, right?
Yeah, Daniel 12:12. But regardless, I'm more concerned with the timeline for now, okay? So the post-tribulation proponents, though, for some reason, makes no sense. You guys want to take, so if you're looking at this chart here, I'll go full screen. You guys want to take the trumpets, which are literally, it's like, so I don't know if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, but it's like saying the battle for Helm's Deep in the Two Towers is actually, the final battle for Mordor in Return of the King. It's like, no, that's completely out of chronology. No, it goes Lord of the Rings, the Two Towers, the battle for Helm's Deep. And then in Return of the King, we have, the battle for Mordor basically at the end of the movie. Well, that's what we see here is we have the seals, sun and moon are darkened, rapture, and the trumpets and vials happening basically consecutively. But that's what you see after these things. And it even says, the angel has the 7 last plagues. The 7 last plagues. That's why before that, we were dealing with the seals. So, I don't know why. And that's a basic breakdown of my position, but I don't know why you stick the trumpets and vials over with the seals. I mean, here's the last thing I'll say, Jamie. Everything before the sun and moon are darkened, right? Because we know after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, the stars shall fall from heaven, and then shall we see the sign of the Son of Man coming in the clouds to gather together his elect. Everything before that event is tribulation, because after the tribulation, so everything before that's the tribulation, everything after the rapture, and we see this perfectly in Revelation from 1 to 11, then 12 to 22.
This is what I want to write down.
Is God's wrath. So when you say you're post-tribulation, I would not consider myself post-tribulation. I'd actually consider myself, yes, post-tribulation, but pre-wrath. Because wrath and tribulation are different. They're not happening at the same time, which I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've got the seals, trumpets, and vials all happening basically at the same time before the rapture. Okay, go ahead, Jamie, if you want to.
So first, can you tell me? I want to, because I want to understand what you're saying better. Like when you say after these things, what verse is that?
So if you
Revelation.
go to,
I'm just for my notes, because I'm going to review I'm just going to review and look over the context stuff later or whatever.
yeah, if you go to Revelation 7, okay,
7.
so we have Revelation 6. So I've got it on screen. If you're screen, I'll make it easy to make some notes. Okay. So right here we have Revelation 6, and it goes through the seals. Basically, the seventh seal is where the wrath begins, because there's silence in heaven in order for the 144,000 to be sealed. And it's perfect chronology, because in Revelation 14, right where we'd expect it, which is after the tribulation, Revelation 13, again, 144,000 sealed, and then Jesus comes in the clouds to reap the harvest of the earth, which is obviously the rapture. Okay, so notice this. Revelation 6, okay, verses 10. Here's the chronology where I'll show you where it says after these things. How long, O Lord, holy and true, dost thou not judge and avenge our blood on them that dwell on the earth? Because this is a tribulation period, persecution. This is not yet God's wrath. That's why they're asking, Lord, when is your wrath coming, basically? Okay, then right after, in the sixth seal, sun and moon are darkened. Moon shall not give their light, so on and so forth, okay? This correlates perfectly with Matthew 24. What happens in Matthew 24 after the sun and moon are darkened? Christ comes in the clouds, gathers together his elect, the rapture. Okay, so notice this, verse 17, the great day of his wrath is come. That means everything before this is tribulation. Everything after this is now God's wrath. And then you ask the question, where does it say after these things? Well, firstly, Revelation 7:3, saying, hurt not the earth, neither the sea nor the trees, till we have sealed the servants of our God in their foreheads, talking about the 144,000. If God has been pouring out his wrath prior to Revelation 7, then that wouldn't make any sense. The whole point of this is the earth, the sea, the trees, none of that has been hurt yet, right? Because we need
now, is this after the rapture, though? I'm not.
Yes.
That's okay.
Right.
Okay. So you're saying this is 144,000? Do you think they're Jews, or do you think they're just whoever?
No, they're Israelites, because you have 12,000 from each tribe, and they would not all be Jews. It's kind of like, I exist in Ontario, so you could say I'm an Ontarioan, or if you live in, whatever, is it somewhere in the States? So basically, I am Canadian, right? So everybody who lives in Ontario is Canadian, but not every Canadian is an Ontarioan, right? So I kind of cringe when people say 144,000 Jews. It's like, they're not all Jews, okay? Because not every single tribe. As you know, I think the word Jew, the first time it was ever mentioned was in 2 Kings, where it actually talks about the split in the kingdom, and you actually have Israel fighting the Jews. The word Jew comes from, as you know, Judea, right? Judea is primarily where. So I would say Israelite,
because I think there is a kind of a typological thing you can say if you don't take everything super literally, like being so like, oh, there's Chris. Okay, so like I think Jew can mean like kind of stand for Jesus, because like there's kind of and so you could see it that way as well. And so like, what did somebody mean when they say Jew, right? So Jew isn't just the 12 tribes; it's the northern kingdom or whatever. And so I forget what it actually says in 144,000. It's from each tribe, and you could argue that everybody has a Jew in them anyway,
and virgin males too. So the requirement, if you actually notice, they're being sealed in heaven on Mount Zion in the heavenly Jerusalem. Okay, Jesus is there, and there's a song that they can sing that only they can learn. Okay, so everything with the sealing of the 144,000 occurring in heaven. It even says these are they which were redeemed from the earth, implying that they are Old Testament saints that are now being resurrected. 12,000 from each tribe, virgin males. I challenge you to find 12,000 today, Israelites from each tribe. But not only that, they have to be male and virgin. Good luck.
I don't take it that way for sure.
It ain't gonna happen. Right. It ain't gonna happen. So let me just say this, Jamie, and go ahead and take your time. So Revelation 7, 1-3. Okay. And after these things. Okay. So now Revelation 7, which is the great multitude, Revelation 8, which starts God's wrath. This is a chronology here. Okay.
Sure.
This is why we have seals, and then we have sun and moon darken, and great multitude appear in heaven. And again, we're continuing. And after these things, I saw 4 angels standing on the 4 corners, hurt not the earth, the sea. Okay, so God's wrath has technically not begun yet, because now we need to seal the servants of God in their foreheads. Okay, so let me go here.
What were the 2 chronologies again? 1 through 11, you said, or something? Is that right? 1 through 11 and 12 through 20?
Right. Yeah, I've got it. Actually, it's right here if you want to see the screen is shared. So
things I'm just,
right, so right
want to make sure I remember, because to refer to when I'm considering what.
Well, yeah, you could do the same thing with the book of Daniel. 1 through 6 is historical, and 6 through 12 is prophetic.
Yeah, I put it at 1 through. I kind of see a 1 through 7 as there's a connection to, but that's a.
And even in the Gospels, I mean, we get basically the same story several times, different details. But here's the thing: the post-tribulation rapturists that aren't pre-wrath, that don't understand this distinction of wrath and tribulation, and wrath comes after tribulation. No, they unfortunately basically have to reject this clear chronology that fits so perfectly. 6, the tribulation; 7, the rapture; 8, the start of God's wrath. And it says after these things, after this. I mean, this is indication of chronology. Then again, 12 to 22, we go back to 1st century AD. 13 is the tribulation. No one's going to disagree with that. Revelation 13 is the classic verse.
Can you send me your files here on this?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, let's do that.
I've been sending this PowerPoint around. Actually, a lot of people have wanted it. So again, if what I'm saying is not true, then tell me, how does it fit perfectly? So notice this: tribulation 6 and 13. If my screen still shares.
Is that Dan? Is that that's just the chapters of Revelation? Okay.
Right. And then you have 7, as expected. Right. So if what I'm saying is false, then all of this shouldn't line up so perfectly. I'm saying we have tribulation, rapture, wrath. Okay, so the 2 chronologies, this is what we'd expect. 6, the tribulation; 7, the rapture. Boom, you got the great multitude appearing in heaven instantaneously right after the sun and moon are darkened. I mean, beautiful, or what? And then Revelation 8, the start of God's wrath. So
I'm not sure I have any issue with any of that, honestly. So I would say I do make a distinction between wrath and tribulation, obviously, because tribulation is what leads up to the wrath, which is poured out.
But Jamie, you have the trumpets and vial. No, but you have the trumpets and vial judgments occurring before the rapture.
Yeah, that's one of the things I'm going to look at. So my general position would be, because I have I think I do find all those chronology correct. It's just a question of how sweeping are any specific parts, and I need to review that.
Well, it's not sweeping. It's after these things. See, here's the thing, Jamie. You require basically the Antichrist destroyed right at the return of Christ. But no, you have so many events after that. As a matter of fact, it's I think it's Revelation 16 or 17 where we actually have the 144,000 that are the only ones that are not being hurt by, I think it's the locusts. Well, so that means 144,000 exist after the rapture during the vial judgments. But if you're going to put the vials before the rapture, that doesn't make any sense. So basically you have 144,000 sealed in order to be immune by the vial judgments and the trumpet judgments. But yet, according to you, the rapture hasn't even occurred yet. And so they're being sealed. Why? I mean, it's just, if you don't take this chronology, it's just sloppy. And what are your thoughts on that, Jamie?
So it's what I mean by sweeping would be something like, so I'm not saying it's not chronological, but I'm saying I wouldn't look at these events. So when, it's kind of, you have to kind of go with me here, but so we could look at a particular chapter, in fact, like verse 12, right? Or chapter 12 in Revelation. Like, that's the birth of Jesus, but is it like constrained to like the year of his birthday until like when? Like, what's it describing? So when it talks about the anybody who's in the audience is welcome to join if they want to talk or contribute. But
Revelation 12 goes back to the birth of Jesus.
Right.
And then it talks about how King Herod wanted to kill all the newborns in order to take out the Messiah.
Yep.
And then
I agree with all that.
It moves right into the tribulation in Revelation 3. It talks about the war in heaven, we understand that the tribulation starts basically with a war in heaven with Michael the archangel, and then Satan is cast down to earth, where he is now wrathful. We see this in Daniel, and then we also see this in Revelation, and then it goes it goes right into the start of the tribulation with Revelation 13 and Revelation 12 ending with Satan basically persecuting the saints, those that keep the commandments of God. So yeah, it starts in 1st century AD and then goes right to the start of the tribulation. And then boom, Revelation 13, we have the tribulation. So it's in perfect chronological order, even in Revelation 12. Go ahead, Jamie.
Yeah. So all I'm saying is within that chapter, okay, I'm not disagreeing with you. Like, it's primarily and focused on.
Yeah, but you are, Jamie. Jamie, you always say, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you.
No, let me explain.
Wait, Jamie, then justify how you can put the trumpets and vials.
I'm not saying I agree with you totally.
The rapture.
I'm not disagreeing with you on the point that it's talking primarily about Jesus' birth, and it's in order as you described it. Now, then I was going to go on to say what the difference is. I don't see it as constrained. Look, I would actually take it to mean it's just talking about like the greater controversy between Christ and Satan. So I take the fall to be just the idea, like it's talking about Satan's fall, probably more likely towards the beginning. Although it doesn't
because Daniel literally talks about how Michael the archangel will, in a day of tribulation like no other, stand up against Satan, against the dragon. That's how
what
in heaven the tribulation starts. So, but Jamie, but here's the thing. You always say, I agree with you. But wait a minute, but you're not correcting yourself. Tell me here in this chart that I have screen shared, okay? How do you put the trumpets and the vials, which literally happen after the great multitude appear in heaven, after the sun and moon are darkened, how do you put those with the seals before the rapture? It makes zero sense. Again, it's like saying the battle for Helm's Deep in the Two Towers actually turns out to be the final battle for Mordor and Return of the King. It's like, what? That's just a complete twisting or misunderstanding of the chronology. So yeah, I just want you to explain that from your position, because we've had lots of talks on this, Jamie.
Well, I'm kind of trying to. So like I haven't worked out specifically what I think the best view is. All I can say at them right now, right? Because the stream's about Daniel, but I'm glad we're talking about this. I'm just saying, like, I don't know for sure, other than I don't think they're all crammed in at the end. I think likely
it's not crammed in. You have 3.5 years for God's wrath to be poured out. I mean, I think it's one of the last vials, the second or last vial, lasts for 5 months. That's why here we have.
Okay.
So.
Send me your chart if you would, please. Do you have my email? So you want me to give it to you now?
Yeah, but here's the thing, Jamie. You keep saying for the last year that, you understand this position. Me and Standing for Truth are so close. No, we're not even close. As a matter of fact, I find your post-tribulation rapturism just as sloppy as the pre-tribulation rapture, because you're trying to fit everything over here. If my screen is still shared on this chart, just explain to me right now, how do you get everything here, which happens after the sun and moon are darkened, after Revelation 6, after Revelation 7, literally says after these things. I mean, after these things means, believe it or not, after these things. What things are we talking about? The great multitude appearing in heaven. After these things, the 144,000 are sealed. Okay. And God's wrath begins. And the first trumpet judgment is hail and fire on the earth. But hail and fire on the earth did not occur prior to the rapture. Because why, Jamie? Because the angel is literally saying, hurt not the earth or the sea or the trees until the servants of God are sealed. So how in the world could the trumpet then fit before the rapture if the earth, sea, and trees have not yet been hurt? Answer that question.
I would say, I'd have to look at it. It's not in front of me. I mean, you're throwing a lot at me. I wasn't prepared.
I had it in front of you earlier, right here.
Well, you say, look, I don't take it as chronological as you do.
You have to take it as it's like saying, well, I don't take the Lord of the Rings trilogy as chronological. It actually turns out that it's Return of the King and then Fellowship of the Ring and then No, it's part 1, part 2, part 3. So just answer this question and we can actually have a meaningful discussion. This is why I find you frustrating, Jamie, is because you constantly say things like, oh, I agree with you. Oh, that makes sense. Oh, I agree with your chronology, but you don't want to admit you're wrong because your chronology
Okay, I won't say I agree with you because you don't seem to get what I'm saying. So, I mean.
Well, I understand what you're saying, but I want you to please.
I don't agree with everything you're saying, and I'm not sure on some of the stuff you're bringing up. I'll have to look at it.
Right now, read the screen. Revelation 7, 1-3. What does that say? Read it.
Yeah.
I've
So
got it underlined.
this is
After
the
these
angels
things,
holding
read it.
back the
Trumpet judgments.
Right. I would say
And
the
this is
seventh
after
one
the
marks the
seals.
return of Christ.
And this is after the seals, after the sun and moon are darkened, and after
Yeah.
the great multitude appear in heaven. So how can you then fit this, even though it says after these things, prior
Where's the
to
multitude in heaven? Show me that verse. Where in line
It's
with
right.
this.
The great multitude in heaven is Revelation 7 at the end of Revelation 7.
Okay, at the end of Revelation 7.
Yeah.
So this is the
Because
beginning.
the sun and moon, the sun and moon went dark in Revelation 6 at the end of Revelation 6.
Mhm.
But and then it literally says the great day of his wrath is come. But they're saying before we pour out the trumpet judgments and the vial judgments, we need to seal the servants because they need to be immune to God's wrath. That's why it says, don't hurt the sea yet. Don't hurt the earth yet. Don't hurt the trees, because the very first trumpet judgment is what? Hail and fire on the earth, which is going to destroy the earth and destroy the trees. That is saying that this has not occurred yet, but yet this is occurring
I
after
hear you. Okay, yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Okay, wait a minute. So you agree with me? You agree with me? So
it sounds like a good point. Yeah.
So are you going to agree that the trumpets and vials come after the sun and moon are darkened? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay. So right here it is. That completely messes up your chronology, because you, as a post-tribulation rapturist, want to say that the trumpets, vials, and seals all occur before the sun and the moon are darkened. But now you've admitted here live for everybody to see that they occur after the sun and moon are darkened, because it literally says after these things. So Jamie, you don't realize it now, but that's going to create a lot of issues for you.
Yeah, I'll have to look at it. You'll send me a thing, I'll look at it.
And notice this. I want you to pay close attention to this. The two-part chronology, if what I'm saying is true, and Revelation 7 is the rapture, that means Revelation 8 is wrath. So if Revelation 14 is the rapture, which it is, Christ comes in the cloud to reap the harvest of the earth. What is Revelation 15 then? It should be what? The wrath, right, Jamie? Read Revelation 15:1, which comes right after 14, the rapture. What does it say? I've got it up on screen. Just read it out. I won't even interrupt you.
I saw another sign in heaven, great and marvelous, 7 angels having the 7 last plagues, for in them is filled up the wrath of God.
So is the wrath occurring? The 7 last plagues, here it's representative of the vials. In Revelation 8, it was representative of the trumpets. Are these vials occurring, therefore, after the rapture? Since the rapture was Revelation
7 last
14.
plagues. I'm not sure exactly what that's supposed to correlate with other than the plagues. Are you saying they're the vials? Is that what you said?
Yeah, because after right after 15, we get the vials in 16, 17.
Okay.
That, it literally says.
I'm not sure, man. I'm not sure. I haven't considered this or looked at this.
But I thought you're Jamie the eschatologist. I thought it's just pretty basic stuff here. So if I go back to the chart, Jamie, refute the chart. Notice the chart here. Okay, so I'm going to screen share the chart for the audience. Sun and moon are darkened, seal 6. God's wrath begins. It literally says after these things. Vials in Revelation 15, 16. Trumpets, Revelation 8, 9, and so on and so forth, because the wrath always comes after the rapture, always comes after the tribulation. Tribulation is in 13, tribulation is in 6, rapture is in 7, rapture is in 14, and wrath comes after that. So there is no way, it is impossible, Jamie, to put the trumpets and the vials prior to the rapture, but you want them prior to the rapture because you need the Antichrist for some reason being destroyed at the rapture, even though the Antichrist isn't destroyed until when? The Battle of Armageddon, which is over here after the rapture, about 3.5 years later. So you need to convert to the pre-wrath position, because your post-tribulation rapture position is just a total joke. And I'm sorry if that sounds mean, but post-tribulation rapturists have to just completely deny this 2-part obvious chronology to Revelation. Does that make sense? Go ahead.
Yeah, let me speak for a minute, though. Don't interrupt me. I'll look at all this stuff. So the issue I have with this, with there being 2 parts, is like if there's a resurrection at Christ's coming, and then there's some tribulation period that you have all worked out because of the 1260.
No, the tribulation's before the rapture.
Oh, okay. So yeah, sorry, I misspoke. I mean, if
Jamie, look at the chart. Refute the chart. Because what you're saying is addressed on the chart.
Dude, that doesn't mean a lot to me without having to go through the text, man. I wasn't, This
Yeah, but
isn't something I've been looking at recently.
Jamie, you and I were arguing about this a year ago. This is why it's frustrating. Oh, Donnie, I want to debate you. I want to debate you. This is how a debate is with me
on
and you.
Daniel.
It's
on
just
Daniel.
constantly, well, I got to look into the. Okay, but then Daniel is the same thing. We see in Daniel a 7-year period, and in Revelation we see what? 1,260 days, 1,290 days, 42 months, 3.5 years. Is it just a coincidence that Revelation constantly talks about a 7-year period, and then Daniel's 70th week is also a 7-year period? Is this all just a big coincidence to you, Jamie?
Not a coincidence. Not a coincidence, but
Then
why
what
is there
is
no
it?
7 years mentioned in the New Testament about this? Why is it 3.5
It is
years?
7 years. It's mentioned everywhere. 1,260 days, 1,290 days, 42 months,
460 days is not
3.5 years.
It's 3.5 years, not 7.
Because it's 3.5 years is
Yeah, but you
equivalent
need a
to the
70th
42
week.
months, and 1,260
70th week.
days is 3.5 years, and 1,290 days. These are different periods. 1,260 and 1,290 are 2 different periods, but they equal 7 years, especially when you consider the fact
Minus
that
75, you're saying? Or 2
no, because
1260.
the Bible's calendar is based on 360-day years because it's based on 30-day months. And so every 6 years, you have a leap month and you have to add 30 days, and that's 1,290. So it's still 7 years. 1,290 is your second half, 1,260 is your first half, 1,335 from the first half is the rapture. Refute the charge.
I don't think it works that way, actually, as far as 1290 days. I don't think there's actually.
Yes, it does. That's just basic. 30-day months is.
Oh, so I guess we know it's going to land on a leap year or whatever, or the year they add the month. Is that what you're saying?
Jamie, if every 6 years you have to add a month, you have to add 30 days, and then this period is 7 years, what the 6-year mark?
You add
30 days.
They add a 13th month, 12 out of every 19 years in a cycle.
This is just basic. I'm not going to, every 6 years they have to add 30 days,
Oh.
or else you're going to have summer in December and winter in July and August. This is just basic facts. I'm not even going to go over it with you. Every 6 years they have to add 30 days. That's why the second half's 1,290, which is
all right, man. Hey,
30 days.
It's my channel, and I'm letting you on, and I was not planning on doing this. So, like, you're trying to.
Well, Jamie, you
slam
keep
dunk
challenging
on
me to a debate,
Back
but you don't know
off
the basics.
Back
You don't
off
know
a
the
little
basics
bit.
of
No. You don't know the basics. It's not every 6
Oh,
years.
I don't know the basics, Jamie. You just could.
It's not every 6 years.
I got you live to admit that the trumpets and vials occur after the sun and moon are darkened. You're going to go back.
I'm not admitting anything until I look at it.
You're going to go back on that because you're going to realize that's an issue. Yes.
Sorry, dude. You're not listening to me, man. Come on. It's my channel. Give me some respect. I'm trying to be nice and hear you out, but like you want to slam dunk all over me, and it's not appropriate. I'm telling you, I'm going to look at your view and consider it. The least you do is, you like go ahead, and then I talk for 10 seconds, and then you interrupt me. So please, just like give me a little bit of respect, because like the view.
Jamie, address my points then. You just keep saying, I agree. I'm going to look into it. Well, when? We've been discussing this for a year. When are you actually going to look into this? It's pretty important.
Let me ask you some questions on what's actually on topic then. And you and Chris can both answer this. You haven't responded to any of my issues with Daniel. So
yes, I have.
And the 12, I take a historical view, so I don't think the 1,260 days and what's described in Revelation. Why does Revelation 13 line up with Daniel 7? On your view,
which one? The 2,300 days or the 1,260?
No, just the beasts. Why are the beasts the same beasts mentioned in Revelation 13 regarding the beast power that are in?
Because Revelation 13. Because the one world order. Because the one world order or the global government is basically the fusion or combination of all the beasts prior to it. It's Jesus coming the first time with Rome, which was basically a type of one world government, ruled the known world. And he's coming back physically during the one world government, which is a legit one world government. It's going to rule the entire planet, not just the known world, right? And that is like the fourth beast in a way. It's like Rome. It's like Babylon. It's like Medo-Persia. It's like the Grecian Empire. It's the combination of all of it.
So Revelation 12 is about Jesus' birth. So that's his first coming. And then Revelation 13 lines up with Daniel 7, right? You're saying you see that, right? You see that connection, I mean?
I'm not really sure what connection you're.
Jesus. Making. So I'm saying the kingdoms in Daniel leading up to Jesus to Jesus' birth, right? Because it gets to Rome, and that's who's ruling the world when Jesus is born, his first coming. And then I would argue that Daniel 13 kind of takes over from that time period, because we see the connection with the kingdoms leading up to Jesus' birth. And then in Revelation 12, you see it talking about Jesus' birth. And then in Revelation 13, you have an amalgamation of the 4 beasts from Daniel 7. Do you agree with that connection there?
I agree with the connection that the one world government, the end times beast, is basically a combination or a fusion of all of the beasts prior. Medo-Persia, Babylon, so on and so forth. It's like them all in many ways, but it also has weaknesses too, because it's like a combination of all their traits. But
there was one thing you went over. I want to clarify where you're coming from here. In Revelation 14, it says you're saying that. So you're saying the 144,000 are after the church has been raptured or something, or how would you say it?
Well, no, it's got the sun and moon are darkened, and then it's showing us a picture in heaven where we have Revelation 7 and 14. We have the same chronology. We first have the 144,000 sealed, then we have the great multitude. That's Revelation 7. Revelation 14.
I agree with that. I do agree with it, because the seal is what you get, and you don't have the mark. So he's saying, like, don't unleash the wrath on those who have the mark yet until we've sealed the saints with the seal of God, and then those are protected.
Well, because they're put on the earth. Yeah, they're protected during the trumpet and vial judgments, because they need to act as a witness during that 3.5 year period, since we're raptured and God never leaves the earth, and the people without a witness. So the 144,000 will act as probably a worldwide ministry, and then the 2 witnesses, probably Moses and Elijah, will be a local ministry in Jerusalem. So, that's the whole point. They're going to be evangelists. They're going to be preaching the gospel. While
so you don't think any of us can get the mark of the beast? Is that right?
Which mark?
Until after
the mark of the beast?
Yeah, presumably. That's what
I don't believe. Well, it's only roughly 70. I'm not going to put a date on it, but it's pretty easy if you just look at the calculations of the abomination of desolation when that takes place, combined with the 1335. You're looking at, you can say, roughly 75 days from the abomination of desolation. So the mark of the beast is really only going to be forced upon everybody for a couple months max.
So you're not sure if that could fall before the saints are taken or whatever, in between the rapture and the Armageddon.
No, we're here for the mark of the beast, because that's the Antichrist war on the saints.
Can I ask you a question?
Go ahead.
So you're saying, are you saying the Book of Daniel's in chronological order?
No, it's broken up into 2 chronologies, like Chris was talking about earlier.
But you don't think what about Revelations?
Yeah, Revelation, same thing. It's 2 chronologies. Revelation 1 to 11 is a perfect chronology, and then Revelation 12 to 22 is a perfect chronology.
That was actually something I was just thinking about today doing, was going through each chapter and then doing a chart like you were just showing. So, I'm trying to ask you questions about, so I can understand your view better. I'm not even done working on, thinking about Daniel and 7 and 8 and stuff. So, the issues I've been bringing up and bitching about is just regarding one part of it, basically chapter 9, and then maybe going in a little elsewhere, because, it all connects to this, but this is something I haven't even been thinking about. That's the problem. And so I'm trying to genuinely ask you questions to make sure I understand your view, and so I can consider it. And also,
well, I think your Daniel 9 position would be slightly more convincing if your end times timeline basically wasn't so sloppy. I mean, and it looks like you are acknowledging it now. That's awesome. That literally we see all throughout Revelation, after these things, after this. So in Revelation 7:1, after these things, which is after what? Sun and moon are darkened. 144,000 are sealed, great multitude. And then now his wrath's being poured out. So if you at least acknowledge that your trumpets and vials come after the sun and moon are darkened, after the 144,000, and after the great multitude, then, you know, maybe we could start taking your Daniel 9 a little more seriously. But it's like, you know, these are kind of just, and the pre-tribbers completely butcher this too. The pre-tribbers say it's a full 7-year tribulation. It's like, nowhere does it say that. Nowhere does it say that there's a 7-year
in
tribulation.
chronological order, since Jesus told he told him exactly what to put write down? Why wouldn't that be chronological order?
It is chronological order.
Okay, if it's chronological order, then pre-trib, your post-trib is not right, correct?
No, it is right. Jamie, share my screen. I'm just going to pull up the chronology. And Jamie, I'm sure you're going to, okay, so I just really want people to look at this chart. Okay, refute the chart. It can't be refuted, but I'd love to see it get refuted. Okay, here's the chart. I'm sharing screen, okay? Chronology-wise, you have Revelation 1 to 11. Revelation 1 starts with John on the Isle of Patmos, 1st century AD. Okay, you have him being taken up in Revelation 4:1 in spirit, not bodily. Okay, it's not the rapture. And then those pre-tribbers that want to say, oh, you know, one guy being taken up spiritually, not bodily. I mean, his body didn't leave the Isle of Patmos. His body was still there. That's not the rapture. But they want to symbolize it and say, oh, one guy being taken up spiritually. You know,
so you're skipping 4 other chapters, correct?
No. Listen, I'm trying to know, because Revelation 1 is an introduction. 2 and 3 are letters to local churches. Revelation 4, John is now being taken up to see things that are now and things that are to come. And that's where we get in Revelation 6, the hereafter phase. And this is where we see what? Notice Revelation 6, we have the seals, okay? Representative of the tribulation, correlate perfectly with Matthew 24, Luke 21, Mark 13. And then in Revelation 7, we have what? The great multitude that no man could number, obviously representing the rapture. Okay, if the pre-tribulation argument was true that says, oh, these are just tribulation saints. No, because this is a great multitude that's appearing instantaneously. That's the whole point of the question that is asked, that where did these people come from? Because they just got there, and it's shocking. It's like, wow, this is a great multitude that no man can number. They just appeared coincidentally after the sun and moon are darkened in Revelation 6. Then the wrath begins with the trumpet judgments in Revelation 8, 9, and then Revelation 11 has what? The kingdoms of this world become the kingdoms of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, which is the millennial reign. Then you get into Revelation 12, and it goes right back to 1st century AD with the birth of Christ. And it's literally the same sequence of events. Revelation 13 is tribulation, and 14 is the rapture.
There's no church after chapter 3, correct?
Okay, Heffy.
I don't think
we're talking about we're talking about local churches in Revelation 3 and 4. Local churches are receiving these letters, but local churches are made up of, believe it or not, saints. Because if you're a believer, you're a saint. And what do we see in Revelation 13, the tribulation period? We see the Antichrist going to war against the saints. So that is the church.
Quick question. So you're saying they're just talking to the churches there, right?
Yeah, local churches during that time. That's
so
all
you're
it
saying
is.
This isn't a 2-part prophecy? Is that what you're saying?
What do you mean a 2-part? It's a 2-part chronology.
This is talking to the people that in the church, correct?
It's talking to
just answer my
believers.
question.
It's talking to the saints. Yes.
This is talking to people in the church, and this also says this is what's going to happen in the end times, correct?
Yes, this is all about the end times.
So that's a 2-part. That's a 2-part prophecy, bud.
Listen, bud. You haven't addressed any of my points. Address the chart. Address the timeline.
Then
why do we see? Answer this question, Jamie. I want to.
Why are you running from my question? See, that's what you do. You run.
Listen, I already answered. I've answered all your questions. Jamie, I want Happy to
guys. I'm on a fact-finding mission here. I'm not interested in dunking on anybody. I'd rather just
Jamie,
ask
can Happy just answer one question and I'll mute. Just
okay, you answer my question then after I ask you.
I think he's asking. You guys, when I talk, try to just, let me direct the conversation a little bit. I'll let you guys speak, of course.
He's the king to
flex. Oh, wait,
you will never answer my question.
Let it go.
You never answered one of my questions.
I answered your question, okay? I've read Revelation
you didn't answer 1,000
times. You probably haven't read it.
All right, guys. Hey, it's my channel.
Why does the great multitude appear after the tribulation?
Answer the question, like I said.
Answer the question.
Guys,
why
can you respect my channel?
Appear in heaven after the tribulation?
Can you respect my channel, please?
Nice.
Thank you. I'll let you guys speak. Please, I'm asking you to just try to relax. I know there's tension here, but so I think what you were asking is, you were suggesting maybe that you have a view that's that it's, of course you should always take it to the original audience. You have to be directed by what the original audience received the text, and then that form your view if there's any other view to be taken. But I think he was asking, Standing, is if, do you take that view that's like, yes, of course it's historical to the churches, but do you believe it's like also prophetic in the sense of the succession of the church through history, or that it's applicable elsewhere, or just in the original?
I don't think that these churches, for example, some say this is representative of the Laodicean age, or this is representative of this age, and this. No, it's just local churches at the time. Now, these local churches, okay, what they were going through, right? Some were lukewarm, some lost their first love, some were going through tribulation, and they were doing well through tribulation. These can all apply. They have an application to churches, local churches throughout all time. Like today, for example, there are some churches that are on fire for the Lord. They're zealous, they're soul winning, they're winning souls, and Jesus would be, he would be very pleased with that. But then you have other churches that are lukewarm, other churches that have lost their first love. So yeah, these local churches at that time, in that time period, okay, they are characteristic of basically all local churches throughout all time. So yeah, we have lessons and applications from those, but no, it's not like, well, this one church represents a certain amount of time, and now we're currently in the Laodicean age.
Okay, yeah, okay. Yeah, no, so you say you take two of the three potential views that people talk about, like, and I've heard Steven Anderson say that before too, and in a sense, I can appreciate that, although I do take, like, in a general sense, it's the state of the church. I would point to something like Matthew 22, where the parable of the virgins, right? He says all 10 virgins were sleeping, which to me smacks of that idea of the last church being asleep in some way or some sense. But yeah, obviously there's churches that are individually on fire for God. So I appreciate that kind of thinking too, I guess.
At all times in history, there are local churches. Okay, if we go back 100 years ago, your local churches that existed on the earth at that time, some would be lukewarm, some would be zealous, soul winning, on fire for the Lord, doing the first works, the first love. Others, basically, Jesus would say, "I'm removing the candlestick," But it does nothing to help Heffy's position here. I mean, I'm asking you basically.
What's your view, Heffy?
He's pre-trib. He admitted it.
Pre-trib. Okay, you're pre-trib. Okay, that's
I just want. And Jamie, I just answered his question in great detail. I'm glad that you clarified. Okay. Now I just want one. It should be an easy answer. Why? And again, refute the chart, refute the clear two-part chronology. Why is the great multitude?
I won't answer your question, bud. I won't answer your question. You never answer.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to answer the question because you know what? You're not on my level.
You never answer one.
I've studied eschatology to the point where I understand what questions you're going to dodge, what questions you're not going to be able to answer.
Hey,
Jamie, have you noticed that I just answered?
Guys, come on, man. Okay. Now I want to get back because I invited Chris on to talk about Daniel, and I want to let him say what he wanted to say and present it. We can all chat. I don't want you guys to leave or anything, but I feel like Chris hasn't got a chance to speak, and
I'm just here to answer questions specifically on Daniel chapter 9.
Yeah, let's talk about
that. Half of it.
I do have a few questions for you, Donnie, but I think I'll just take a look at what you some of the stuff I wrote down, and then if you want to send me that file, I'll take a closer look because it's something I've been wanting to go over and like consider the different ideas about the seals and the vials and the plagues and all that. Like I just haven't looked at it close enough to like see if it's plausible. I just know on my interpretation of Daniel and a lot of Revelation where I see connections, it would appear that some of that stuff has to be historical. I just haven't looked at for like a long time. So,
well, Jamie, I've literally just got done a bunch of presentations on Daniel, so I can pull up the relevant verse that we can look at.
Daniel right. 7, I just want to look at it for myself. It's just so much information. I need to look at that. I got the general gist.
Well, yeah. I'm saying if you want to move now to Daniel 9, since we got that out of the way, that's fine. Look into it. And Jamie, I know you at least agree with me. I'm hoping to get you to pre-wrath and I'd recommend, even Dr. Alan Kirshner's books on it. He's got a really good timeline. There are some things I disagree with him on, which is why I've got my own charts here and whatnot. But I know you'll at least agree with me in this argument. Okay, because you're strict post-tribulation. We got to get you a post-tribulation pre-wrath. But I think you're on your way there, especially once you realize the trumpets and vials come after. after the sun and moon are darkened. Everything before the sun and moon are darkened or tribulation, everything after is wrath. That's why when people say, oh, the 7-year tribulation, that's not anywhere in scripture. Okay. There's 3.5 years tribulation. The last part of that tribulation period could be considered the great tribulation, but everything after the tribulation of those days, when the sun and moon are darkened and Christ comes in the clouds, as reflected by what? Revelation 14 and Revelation 7 with the great multitude and Jesus reaping the harvest of the earth. It's so basic, so basic. I just don't understand how so many seemingly really smart people hold to this pre-trib nonsense. After Revelation 14 and 7 is the wrath. The wrath is the final 3.5 year period. So Jamie, I think you'd agree with me. It's not accurate to say 7-year tribulation because you don't find 7-year tribulation.
Yeah, right.
Anywhere.
Yeah, right. But see, something I don't even really want to go down this road, but like for me, those time periods in Daniel 12, I think are not meant to be taken literal because that there's a whole issue with the calendar argument that I've made. I don't know if you've seen it, but like I have an issue. Like so like this is what I said in the comment to you as well. Like is what would be an interesting conversation after I look at some of this stuff and get a little more familiar with how I think it should be taken and understand your view better. I kind of understood generally that's kind of how you look at it or whatever with the seals. Like they're all in that period there at the end after the, during the tribulation and before wrath. But I was going to say I agree with you is yes, like the last trumpet is like when Christ returns, all that stuff, or when Christ comes.
Yeah, but not the last trumpet at the rapture.
Right. That's I mean, just mean like they connect to that whole period.
Well, the last trumpet at the rapture is not the same thing as your 7th trumpet.
Right. No. Right. I just mean they're I am saying time events with the rapture, with the destruction of the Antichrist, with tribulation, with wrath, and that these things connect to that. That's what I'm saying. I agree with you. I'm just saying to look at how they potentially work out historically, because I think the 1260 days are historic because of the way Daniel uses it and the kind of genre it's in. But I don't have like a thing all worked out to like try to refute what you're saying. So I just would rather, take in more information and consider it and then look at it, and because I want to be open-minded.
I don't think you have to take it as a historicist position, because the 1260, the 1290, the extra 30 days, as we know, is pretty basic, because every 6 years you're going to have to add 30 days. And that's why you got 1290. So you're still dealing with a 7-year period. And right in the middle of the week is what? The abomination of desolation. And that is when those days are shortened. And all you got to do is a little bit of subtraction, and that's where you get roughly 75 days. And everything after that, basically to the end of the 7-year period, is God's wrath. I understand you want to look into it. That's fine. But it does correlate beautifully. That's why I say, and I got it from Charles, refute the chart. I got a very detailed chart there, and I challenge anybody to refute it. I got a debate on this tomorrow, actually. So this I will consider my prep. But Jamie, if you want to now shift to Daniel 9, let's do that. And then I'll just send you this stuff, give you the opportunity to address it. And then, go ahead. Let's, and you know what? B.S. Lewis? Okay. Then let's set up a debate. He says, nah, Donnie's wrong. Refute my points. Refute the chart.
He's just being my buddy.
Refuting pre-trib raptures like taking candy from a baby. That's why I get aggressive, because it's like I'm just trying to teach someone 2 + 2 is 4. And they're arguing. And it's just, I'm sorry, it's one of the most annoying positions to argue, because it's just obviously
you think that it's chronological order. That's your problem, man.
Chronological. Say that 10 times fast. You have after these things.
I think you understand what I'm saying.
That indicates a chronology. Revelation 7:1 says after these things. After what things? After the sun and moon are darkened. And then we have the great multitude appear in heaven. Answer, Heffy, why do you have the great multitude appearing in heaven that no man can number? Obviously the rapture, it says they came out of great tribulation. Why is that after the sun and moon are darkened? Answer that.
Say it one more time.
No, I'm not going to say it again, Heffy.
I think there's something tied to them being darkened that is suggestive of a typological meaning. Like although classically historians have said it's like these different events or whatever, and we see that happen at Jesus' death too, right? So there's weird overlap. I think everybody should listen to what some of the. I mean, like I heard you in your stream say something like.
Shadow fulfillment, you have typology all throughout.
Right. And so I think, to say, but you said something like partial preterism is totally wrong or whatever, and you didn't used to say that. I think that's it, because like it's obviously that's essentially what partial preterism is.
I
like,
say partial preterism is wrong to the partial preterists that don't believe in what's called
a big
shadow
peak
fulfillments and then future more dramatic fulfillments. An application for that time period or that generation, and then an application for.
I see.
So, for example, you're more so a partial preterist because you would say that, you know, the destruction of the temple basically in 70 AD with Titus and his army was the literal dramatic fulfillment, where I would say, no, that is an example of a shadow fulfillment because not everything happened to a T. And in the future, we're going to have the literal, more dramatic fulfillment. So that's where I would differ.
What's interesting about that is I actually believe in a future abomination of desolation. I just don't think, and so like in the end of 27, like you could say like I've read that to think, you know, you could read it to be like reaching down to the end of time, but it's more like, because, you know, regarding whether or not you're in the covenant Jesus makes or whatever, those who don't accept it unto the end will ultimately be destroyed, and that is the one who's opposing the Jesus is you know, the new covenant. So I would read it like it, in a sense, it does sound like unto the consummation, things like that. And I believe in a future of desolation. So like I've been mulling that over in my head, but you don't have to get like this. I still believe the abomination of desolation is mentioned. Like, so the thing with Daniel 11 that's so weird to me is like, so when it talks about that covenant there, I think that's actually referring to Daniel 9's covenant, but it's the covenant between God and man through Christ. And so the thing I feel like is going on often is like you guys hear what I'm saying and you think like, therefore I'm denying this, that, and the other. And it's like, not necessarily. I think,
okay,
you know,
not necessarily. You think that the abomination is just a
typology
of some sort?
I think the abomination of desolation is talking about the final Antichrist. Now, abomination of desolation.
Jamie, let's have the verses up. Hey, Jamie, I think this is a good, and I know you're the host, but share my screen. I'll put the verses up and let's discuss them. I've got all the verses.
Where exactly are they? Yeah, we can, but let's do that.
11, 12.
Well, let's do it right after we go over the. Well, I get, but I'd rather go through Daniel and talk about each verse and go through it slowly. But
yeah, let's do it. And that's I've got all the verses. You want to start with Daniel?
Okay, we'll just go for that. That's fine. Yeah, you can post it. We can use yours. That's fine. Just you have all 4 verses.
Yeah,
together.
We've got them all.
I'd like to have them all on one screen. You know, from 24 to 27. Although I wouldn't mind. We should read. I'd like to for the Daniel 9 because I know you like mentioned like you were saying. Context of Daniel 8 refers to the why that's the context of the he or whatever. I would say no, because Daniel 9, the context switches in the early verses of chapter 9 and talk about.
Let's discuss it. Here it is. I've got it 24 to 27 right here.
Yeah, that's fine. Can you make it bigger? Can you do full screen on that? On like the displayed page? Yeah, there we go. All right. Why don't you go ahead and say your piece and then I'll just go from there.
Well,
and then we'll go through each.
Firstly, I don't think it's a good idea to just pull Daniel 9 out of its context. And what I mean by that is just only interpreting Daniel 9, but not in light of Daniel 7, Daniel 8, Daniel 11, Daniel 12. Okay, because it's Daniel 11, correct me if I'm wrong, where we see the Antichrist in terms of the immediate fulfillment or application was Antiochus Epiphanes. Okay, making a league, making an agreement, making a covenant. That's basically what league means. Okay, so he's doing that in Daniel 11. We also see him in Daniel 8 and 11, taking away the daily sacrifice, making the temple desolate. Okay, so when we understand those verses, when we're interpreting Daniel 9, then I think it's obvious. And then Jamie, you take your time. We can go. We'll start here. And after 3 score, and we'll start. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and to build Jerusalem unto the Messiah the Prince shall be 7 weeks. So Daniel's broken up into 3 elements, 3 components, 7 weeks, 62 weeks, and 1 week. So I would say there's 2 gaps. There's a gap from 7th week to the 8th week. Okay. And then there's a gap from the 69th week to the 70th week because you have 3 components. And I'd like to see how you can work out, and maybe you can answer this after, whether you start with Artaxerxes, and I guess, his decree to basically build the city, or King Cyrus and his decree for the Jews to go back into the promised land and build the temple. Either way, you got to do a lot of what's called cooking of the books. You're cooking the books. You're trying to basically, because of hindsight, you're trying to make the start of that decree go right to roughly 33 AD with the death of Christ. But I've never seen an actual calculation that didn't require a lot of twisting and turning. And I think it's because you have to recognize that there's a gap between the 7th and 8th week. I'm not saying it's a huge gap, but it could be somewhere between, 50 and 90 years or so. But I'll let you respond to that in a second. But here we go. So, and after 62 weeks shall Messiah be cut off, but not for himself. We understand, because he died for the sins of the world. And the people of the prince that shall come. So we have a prince and we have the people of him, which basically we understand there's a king, there's a prince, there's a president. Typically it's not, the president going over and, acting as a one-man army. No, he's got his army, right? He's leader, he's commander, he's chief basically. So shall come and destroy the city. So this prince who's the leader, his people, right, what I would say is the Roman army, are destroying the city and the sanctuary, and the end thereof shall be with a flood. Flood typically corresponds with army, a war in the Bible. And unto the end of the war, we see that desolations are determined. And so here's the question. Here's the debate basically. And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. Okay, well, we understand, again, when we interpret all the verses, 7, 8, 11, 12, the Antichrist is making a league with many, with a group. And he's going to do that as he comes in peaceably. And he's going to be deceitful, though. He's basically going to, persuade or charm his way into power through this agreement. And then he's obviously going to break the agreement and go against it. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause a sacrifice and oblation to cease. So you're saying this is Jesus, this is the Messiah. But the last singular noun to this pronoun, he, does go back to the prince. Okay. And you're going to try and say, well, it's the people of the prince. So that doesn't work grammatically. And so it should go back to Messiah over here in verse 25. But to me, it just doesn't make any sense, because basically your immediate antecedent is the prince of the people. But when you actually interpret this in light of all the other verses, we know the Antichrist makes a league or an agreement. We know he breaks it. And we also know that in the middle of the week is when the abomination of desolation takes place. And in Daniel 8, it literally says, by him, the daily sacrifice was taken away. So, I mean, we have the antecedent, which you're going to argue against, but we also have just this perfect correlation with not only these verses in Daniel, but also in Revelation, right in the middle of the week. And then it even says that he will continue in power after the abomination of desolation for 42 months. Which just works out perfectly. But that's my position. Go ahead, Jamie.
Chris, do you want to add anything to that, or
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So there's a distinguishment there. You have the Messiah, the prince. Okay, that's one prince, which is the good prince. And you have this dark prince in the verse right after it, which is referring to the Antichrist. If you want to make what we consider to be the Antichrist, the people of the prince, Antichrist that shall come, if you want to make that Jesus, then it really conflicts with, the other places which show that that's the Antichrist because of what he's doing, destroying the temple, the abomination of desolation. It fits like a glove. It seems like you're trying to fit like a square peg into a round hole or something, because it correlates so well. And if you want to try to make it say something else, this is, I don't think it's the most logical thing to do.
Yeah, I don't feel strongly about that. So I would say, can you put the other verses back up? I'll show you what I'm talking about. I think, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to, for the audience sake, for anybody who's new to this, I just wanted to give them a visual of what I'm saying, where, and you know this, Jamie, but for anybody new, what I'm saying is Daniel 8:11, where I talked about how, by him, the daily sacrifice was taken away. Well, that would go back to the little horn, which I think we would all agree is Antiochus Epiphanes, but also the future Antichrist. By him, the daily sacrifice is taken away. So I would then go to Daniel 9:27. Someone's taking away the daily sacrifice. You're going to say it's Jesus, but I'm going to say it's the little horn.
That's an interesting, because I do agree that, so here's where I agree and here's where I disagree. So I would say I don't think Daniel 8 is a Antiochus Epiphanes, but I really don't want to go down that trail. Like, I get that there's strong arguments for that, but I'm going to do a presentation on the issues with what I see as issues with that. But I get that there's why people argue that, and it makes sense to the original audience. Now, but I would say I would want to tie Daniel 7 and Daniel 8 and Daniel 11 into like this power, and like, what is it? And so this kind of issue that's hard to like even describe to someone reading it the way you're reading it, and I'm not trying to discredit the way you're reading it. I think it's a legitimate way to read it. It's chronological, it's logical, all that. I would just say, like, to me, is indicated by the genre and stuff. It is giving you individual events and things in chronology or in order, at least, loose order, at least, with things recapitulated and cycling. And so right now I'm just trying to describe this nuanced thing. I'm not trying to say you're wrong or I'm right or anything. I'm just saying this is kind of the difference. I'm trying to just communicate here. So it's like, when it's using symbolic language, it's not necessarily really constrained to, like, it's telling, like, they're symbols of like this opposing power to God. And like I said, I'm not saying they're not specific. I'm saying, like, for instance, this beast, the amalgamation of all the beasts, each kingdom succession like absorbs the one before it. But this final beast is like a coming up of that same beast. That's why we know it's Rome, I would say. And but it's an even greater beast, right, that ends up taking over the whole world. And that's what we were talking about earlier. But in other words, in Daniel 8, I would say, is the same power that's in Daniel 11, the king of the north. See him come up again later in the book of Revelation in the future. And so you would say that we would agree that there, and you would agree in the sense that, like, yeah, it's like a cyclical thing. And so Antiochus is like a type of the future Antichrist or the king of the north. I would say, yeah, I agree with that, but just kind of from like a slightly different position. It's more like it's describing that power. How can I say it better? More specific point on that. But I think with the way you see chapter 8 and chapter 11 align with each other with this power, it's and then you look in Daniel 8 particularly about the details and the what was I going to say? You have chapter 8 up there again. You can throw back up there. It was like,
well, because if chapter 8 in the timeline is specific, and I'll get it right here. If chapter 8 is specifically in terms of the immediate application, right? There's always a shadow fulfillment. I mean, sometimes we see like quadruple fulfillment, right? With the full preterists don't understand. So if Daniel 8 is in terms of its immediate application is referring to Antiochus Epiphanes, which we understand. I mean, they've even found coins of him.
Yeah, but here, this is what I would ask you about that. Yeah. So you got it on the screen there. Like, what do you make of, like, Antiochus Epiphanes was like, it wasn't like a huge deal. Like it wasn't like this huge grand thing that's happening, but like, why is it talking like this host of heaven was cast down, to the ground? It almost sounds like, heavenly.
The thing about it is that it was only partially fulfilled.
Right, exactly. It's a shadow.
There are things in it that haven't been fulfilled in its entirety.
Sure,
so it was a literal fulfillment, but not in its entirety. So it's more of a foreshadowing of a greater event that will happen in the future.
Yeah,
right. With Antiochus Epiphanes, we understand they found coins where it literally said, God manifest. He went into the temple. He desolated it. He set up a statue of Zeus, and they offered up a pig. So this is a shadow. It's pardon.
When was that? Would you say, what year is this again? That if it's Antiochus, if it is, like, what year? It would have been 150 Maccabees.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been during the Grecian Empire because he's the
right. Okay,
he's a little horn that came out of. I just want to make this point. So when we read these, just like in Daniel 9, okay, we do see shadow fulfillments. We see immediate applications. We even see a dual prophecy fulfillment, right? We can even in ways apply Daniel 9 to where I just want to go back up here.
Did you take out? Did you request? Did you go to Maccabees?
Well, here, just a sec, because this stuff's technical. Before I lose my train of thought, okay. In Daniel 27, we understand that we've got 7 years. Right in the middle of it, the sacrifice is taken away. Right? There's a war, so on and so forth. Well, if we look to 70 AD, lo and behold, and I find this to be an amazing fulfilled prophecy. We have the Jewish-Roman War, which was 7 years, 66 AD to 73. And it was right in the middle of it, 70 AD, where the temple was destroyed and the sacrifice was taken away by Commander Titus, who eventually became emperor. Okay, I'm not saying that this is the literal, more dramatic fulfillment, right? The full fulfillment. This would again be a shadow. So I think we have many shadows of the coming Antichrist in Antiochus Epiphanes, in Titus, and then of course the future Antichrist. That's why you'll read these prophecies in Daniel 7, 8, 9, 11, and 12. And like you pointed out, Jamie, and how Chris accurately responded to, we see partial fulfillments. That's because it all hasn't been fulfilled yet. There's still more to be fulfilled in the end times, with the actual one world government, with the end game, basically, right? These are all just small shadows of the main event, basically. Go ahead.
Would you say Maccabees was a credible source? Is that what you're saying?
I wouldn't. No, that's apocrypha. It's totally wrong in a lot of what it says about history, and I wouldn't take it as a credible source. It does talk about Antiochus Epiphanes, but you can find what I'm saying just in secular sources. You can find, if you just Google Antiochus Epiphanes, you'll find the coins that I'm talking about, where he literally called himself God Manifest. He said he's God.
The holiday Hanukkah is actually like a celebration of the fact that they were able to rededicate the temple after that had happened.
Right.
Yeah, that's a tricky issue for me, because it's like I'm not sure what to think of it. But the one thing I find is like kind of sketchy about it is I agree that there's shadow fulfillments and all that, but like we believe that Christ put an end to the sacrificial system, even if they kept sacrificing afterwards. We believe that the point of it for God, the way God used it, right, obviously, is that to take away their sins, because they trusted in his provision to take away their sins. But once Jesus came and died, obviously, whether they killed a pig or their wife or a pig with lipstick on the altar, it was, if it was even can be called the temple of God, which I would argue it can't, because Jesus said he left it desolate to them because he knew he was about to die. So he
Jamie, if I could add this based on what you said, I don't fully agree, because again, Jesus took away the sins of the world, and sacrifices are not going to take away our sins. So the Jews that continued to sacrifice after the death and resurrection of Christ, they were not atoning for their sins. They need to believe on Jesus to be saved. We'd all agree with that. So you're trying to overly spiritualize this verse, because it literally says in the midst
everything you just said I agree with. Absolutely. It was what I was saying.
Right, but and here's my problem is you want to interpret that. I'm trying to find my cursor. Oh, there we go. In the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. You're trying to just completely spiritualize that and say, well, yeah, they continued the sacrifices, but they were supposed to stop. I mean, to me, that's just really reading the text.
Yeah. So I'm saying, like, you could say it that way, but I'm not over spiritualizing it. Like, the point of the sacrificial system was their connection to God. The animal sacrifices is irrelevant, really. It's their trusting God to take away their sins, which comes.
But this passage is literally saying that whoever the he is stops the sacrifice. But we know after the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ, the Jews still sacrificed animals. It didn't stop. And you're saying, well, it was supposed to. That's not what it's saying, though. It's literally saying whoever this person is, who I'm saying is the Antichrist. And just because, Jamie, the he, or the people of the prince is an object of a preposition, doesn't stop it from being the immediate antecedent. So I just don't really find your basic argument all that convincing. But yeah, it's not just saying, well, they were supposed to stop the sacrifice. I mean, this verse is literally saying whoever this he is stopping it. I mean, there will, even if the Jews want to, they can't, because it's completely stopped.
Well, yeah, but Jesus knew the temple wouldn't be destroyed. That's what he says in Matthew 20. When you see this Jerusalem in Luke 23 or 21 or whatever it is, he says, when you see the city surrounded, I think that has to have application to the disciples, because he's speaking to them. directly,
Yeah, but
because they ask him
again,
that
this
question.
verse is not. Yeah, but this verse is not saying, well, he's by his death and resurrection, he's going to
Oh,
stop the
well, it says
sacrifice,
he makes.
not until 40 years later in 70 AD. No, this is
Well, no,
saying in a moment.
the sacrifice that he made the sacrifices that they do not do what his sacrifice replaced.
I understand what you're saying, but that's not what it's saying. It's literally saying whoever this he is,
he makes
okay,
the wave
he
offering.
stops it to the point where whoever the Jews, okay,
yeah, well, let's just agree to disagree. I get what you're saying,
right? Exactly, but and that's the literal interpretation. You're trying to say, well, they were supposed to stop it, or it stopped the need.
No, I'm not saying they were supposed to. I'm saying what it means, what it really means, what the real literal point is that God takes away your sin because you can't do it. And so the real purpose of it, the literal purpose of the sacrifices and what it's talking about when it talks about sacrifices for sins in a temple, it's talking about God taking away your sin by his work, just like he made them skins in the garden. So I'm just saying, and look, I get what you're saying.
But no, Jamie, you're still not addressing. I agree with that. I've already said Jesus came to, and I've got it all written here. He came to finish the transgression, make an end of sins, bring in everlasting righteousness. I mean, because of his death on the cross and his resurrection, through our faith in him, we can be passed from death unto life, and we are given everlasting life. He made an end to sins spiritually.
I know
but one day in the millennial reign, he's actually going to make an end to sins literally. So you're taking.
No, I agree with that.
Yeah. So
you mean taking, like no more sin happens, period, end of. Yeah,
exactly. Right now we still sin. So he didn't fully, make an end to sins. He did spiritually put an end to sins, because when we believe, we're given everlasting life. Okay, we're not going to be accountable.
We agree on that. We can be. I think we can be agreeable here and not over and try to make the other person look like a heretic. Because it's already, but not yet. It's realized, but it's
the physical aspect
consummated. Yeah. Well, you could. I like to say he did.
Let me just say this. Let me just say this in light of what you said. Let me just say this. Okay, all of this stuff here does have an application or basically a shadow fulfillment in his first coming, because you could say, Jamie, and to anoint the most holy, you can say he was anointed with the Holy Spirit at his baptism. Amen. I agree with you on that, but he will also be literally anointed at the millennial reign with oil as king, in the same way that your priests, your prophets, and your in the Old Testament, the holy priests. Okay, you could also say that Jesus Christ is ruling and reigning in our heart today. You can say, obviously, there is everlasting righteousness, because when we believe, our sins are forgiven, past, present, and future. But the point is, not all of this is fulfilled to a T, because it still needs to literally take place. If you notice this one, to seal up the vision and prophecy, that is basically saying that all of these prophecies, all of these visions made, will be sealed up eventually. And I would say that that's basically at the millennial reign, when the actual end to sin takes place, when he actually is anointed.
I'm okay with that. There's a sense where I think you have to say that. I have to step away from I'll hear you guys. I got to do something in my garage.
I have a quick question.
You guys, Chris, you can respond and then go ahead and ask questions, Hefe, if you want to. But I'll be hearing you guys. So I just want to put my chart on. This is the way I see it. I just wanted you to see how I look at it. But I want to say more and I want to respond, but I gotta run real quick. And
I'll take your time. Take your time. Standing for true. You said you could prove in Revelations that there was a post trib, correct?
I've already done it.
No, you did a lot of talking, but you didn't pull up no Bible scriptures. Pull up some Bible scriptures and show us.
Is my screen still shared?
Yeah.
Okay, so obviously you're new to this, because I've literally got a 20-hour series going on right now.
It's not. I think Jamie's screen is up there. Just saying.
Oh, Jamie. Well, he's walked away.
Go ahead. You could tell us. You could tell us those scriptures you're referring to, correct?
Sure. Matthew 24 literally says immediately after the tribulation of those days.
No, you said in Revelations. Revelations.
Revelation 6. Okay, I'll ask you a basic question, Heffy. Where in Revelation is the sun and moon dark?
No, I said prove your point. I said
hey, listen, idiot. Listen, idiot.
Can't
Heffy,
do it. All
you're a
right,
troll.
never mind. Don't
You're
worry
a
about it.
moron.
Don't worry
You're
about it, bud.
you
It's
not
okay.
understanding the basic point and the basic scriptures is not my
It's
problem.
all right,
It's
man.
actually
Hey,
your
man,
problem.
I
You're
just
an
asked you to
embarrassment.
prove your
Heffy.
point in
Heffy,
Revelation.
you're an
what you
embarrassment,
said.
okay?
But I
Matthew
proved that
24
you're just talking.
correlates to Revelation
All
6.
you do is
I
talk.
am proving
And
it
if
to you right now
and if,
because
and if
Revelation
people
6
just
is where
listen
the
to
sun
you
and
talk,
moon are
but
darkened,
you
you
can't go
moron.
to no
Revelation
scripture
6,
and
moron. Hey,
Revelations and prove
moron.
your point, can
Revelation
you?
6 is where the sun
Just
and moon
prove
are
your
darkened.
point in
You're asking
Revelations.
me to
That's all I
prove
asked.
where the rapture is
I said, show me the
post-tribulation in
scriptures.
Revelation, and I am
Well, then
showing
show
you
me the
that it is in
scriptures.
Revelation 6 where the
You
sun and
can't
moon are
do it.
darkened,
Thank you.
and it is in Revelation 7 where the rapture takes
No,
place, because
I
a great
want the
multitude that
specific
no man can number
words
of
of
all
what you're
tongues and
talking
all
about,
people
not
and all
just a
nations
general.
appear before the throne.
No,
And the
you
question is
can't
asked,
do it.
where did this great
You can't
multitude
do
come
it.
from? And the question is answered out of great tribulation. I just
Exactly.
proved it to
You're
you.
reading your. This is the exact somebody who doesn't read the Bible and all he
Heffy,
has
you're an
is
embarrassment.
he
You're
reads,
low-hanging fruit.
he reads
You're a
from whatever
nobody.
somebody
You
else
don't
wrote.
understand the basics of soteriology. You don't understand the basics of eschatology.
Exactly.
You're not
You
saved.
can't prove your point.
Effie,
All
you're on
can't
your way
show
to the
me
lake
in the
of fire. The
scriptures
Bible says
your
the
point.
natural man can't understand the things of the Spirit of
Hey,
God. You can't know these things. You don't
okay,
understand
well,
what I'm
show
saying.
me then.
It's right
Show
over your
me.
head
I'm
because you're
asking
not
you to
saved.
show me.
You don't have the Holy Spirit
Well,
to
then you
guide
can't
you into
show
all
me.
truth and
See,
knowledge.
you're saying
That's
I
why what
can't,
I'm
but then
saying,
show me
it's
then.
basic, but you
Well, then
can't
show
understand
me.
it because you're
Why can't you
unregenerate.
show me
You're
then?
unjustified.
Why
You're
can't you show me
predestined
the
currently
exact
to the lake
scripture?
of fire. It's time to get saved. It's
Exactly.
time to get saved because you can't even
All right.
understand the
Hey,
milk of the word.
hey, you know
You
what,
can't even
man?
understand the milk of the word, and you're expecting
I
me
don't
to
have to
explain the
read
meat of the word to
the
you.
context, the words down below the Bible. I can read it myself and understand it. So
Yeah, go to Revelation 6, sun and moon are darkened, and Revelation 7:9, right after the sun and moon are darkened, guess what? The rapture takes place. You have a great multitude that no man can number. They appear right before the throne. This correlates perfectly with Matthew 24, where immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, and then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. He gathers together his elect. The rapture, the elect is not talking about Israel
hey,
or the
speak a little
Jews.
faster.
It's
Go
talking about
faster. Go
believers.
faster. We could go faster.
Matthew, you don't understand the basics, Heffy. Matthew 24,
Anybody who
29 to
talks like
31,
this
and then compare it to
Russell,
Revelation
go
6,
faster,
12 to
faster,
14.
faster, and try
Jamie,
to
share my
bring
screen. I've got all
confusion.
the verses on screen,
Do
and
not
Heffy,
trust this
it's
person.
just going over his head.
Do it. No, hey, because it's like you can't just break it down.
I've already
in the
broken
general
it.
context.
How can I break it down any more clear? Christopher, did I not just answer his question by correlating Revelation 6, Revelation 7 with Matthew 24? Is that not what I just did, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the issue is here.
Well,
Maybe
he's unsaved. He's unsaved. He's a work salvationist.
it sounds like y'all two have some history. Maybe you've done this
said that you
before.
can worship Satan and be saved, right?
No, listen, you're
the one who
straw
said you
manning
can
my
worship
position.
Satan and be
The only
saved.
one who's worshiping Satan is you, because you're not saved and you believe in a work salvation, Heffy.
When did I say that?
You're a work salvationist.
Well, when did I say that though?
Just about
Never said that one time.
10,000 times in our.
You're a liar.
No, you're a liar.
You're just a liar.
No, you're a liar.
You're a liar. That's why you said you could worship Satan and be saved, correct? Didn't you say that? Exactly.
No, Heffy.
Only a
Okay,
demon
on
would
that,
tell you.
I want to. Okay, go ahead and say your piece or whatever.
Hey, Jamie, can you just share my screen, because Heffy, he's obviously a little bit,
Sure.
he's a little bit slow.
Sure.
And I was
That's all right. Don't worry about it. You don't have to explain it.
So now don't worry about it. Jamie, right now,
don't explain it now.
Way back. Mute
don't
Heffy.
try to explain it now.
He's really getting on my nerves.
Ago.
Heffy asked for a scripture
You're good.
the post-tribulation rapture. I showed him Revelation 6 and Revelation 7, but it wasn't screen shared, and he obviously is not familiar with 99.9% of the Bible. So here it is on screen for you.
I know that you can't worship Satan and be saved.
Heffy, you're dodging. You're dodging.
That.
It's a red herring. Okay.
You don't know that, do you?
I answered your question. Where is the post-tribulation rapture in Revelation? Here it is. Answer the question. Revelation 6, at the sixth seal, the sun and moon are darkened. Okay. Right after the sun and moon are darkened, just like in Matthew 24, where Jesus comes in the clouds to gather together his elect.
Does that say there's a rapture right there? Or does that say that the sun and moon are darkened?
What happens after the sun and moon are darkened?
There's a rapture right there.
Yeah, what happens after the sun and moon are darkened?
That doesn't say that there's a rapture right there.
Yes, it does.
What are you talking about?
What comes after 6, Heffy? 7. And in 7, after this I beheld, after what? After the sun and moon are darkened, moron. Lo,
Where
a
does
great
that say that there's a
multitude, which
rapture
no
there,
man.
bud?
Well, are you kidding me right now? What
Show me where it
else?
says that. I'm asking you.
Heffy, the word rapture is not in the Bible, believe it or not.
Exactly.
The word rapture is not in the Bible,
So
but
what
what
are
is
you-
in the
what are you
Bible, 1
referring to?
Thessalonians
There's a
4,
rapture?
is
What do you
being caught up
refer to?
together with them in the clouds. Okay, Heffy, I'm about to leave because I can't stand Heffy.
Okay,
He's a nobody.
I've got some.
He's useless.
I've got some.
He's worthless. He's
I want to
unsafe.
give a
I mean,
few.
Heffy's on his way to hell.
Hey,
so.
thank you. You're the one who said you could worship Satan. Remember that.
You're on your way to hell, Heffy.
Hey,
I don't think I've ever met I don't think I've ever met somebody who's a pre-tribber that was also not OSAS. I don't think so. That's interesting.
remember, once saved, always saved. Once you say Jesus, you're saved. Remember? I forgot about that.
Heffy, you're on your way to hell. Get saved.
I don't want to get into that whole thing. I
Thank
want
you,
to
Don.
explore
Appreciate
the different views.
You speak so
So-
eloquently.
Let me give some of the issues I have with.
I
some
don't
of
like
the stuff,
damnable
okay?
heretics, Heffy. I have zero.
Yeah, I don't like
respect for you.
Pharisees either. I don't
Okay,
like
that's fine.
Pharisees.
Okay, guys,
Every
hold
time
on.
you
Neither
talk,
does
I refute you.
Jesus hates
Every
You're
time
you're
you
all
talk, I
lost because
refute
you don't keep the Sabbath. We'll all see. We'll get you saved. Don't worry.
Okay, let's go back to Daniel 9. Let's go
Appreciate
back
it.
to
Yeah,
our
okay,
sophisticated conversation. 'Cause
Yeah,
Heffy
I
is
feel bad.
incapable of a sophisticated conversation.
This was I was
You couldn't
I'm
prove
glad
your
you're.
point. Can't even
I
prove
want to
your point.
discuss this stuff, but it's so convoluted. There's so much
Hey,
crap. Like
It's not
it's
hard.
so,
to
I'm here
find
all
it.
night.
You gotta just read the Bible. You guys have a good day.
you're welcome to come
All right,
anytime.
you too, brother. You read
Let's
too.
just
You
try
can
to
read a little more than you already have.
let's
Chris,
all
don't
just
call him a
be-
brother.
Yeah.
It's hardcore work salvation.
Let's just all show
Never.
how
Hey,
Holy Spirit.
if
This is
anything,
a
he's
divider.
a
Donnie is a
sister.
divider.
If anything, he's a
Bible warns
sister
about
because he's
people who
obviously got
divide
much
the
more
brethren.
estrogen than he does testosterone.
He doesn't even read the Bible. He doesn't believe what Jesus says.
Heffy, listen.
I'm not taking any
Clearly-
sides here.
Clearly,
It's
you're a
just-
bit soft. You're a bit tender, possibly borderline snowflake.
Never.
Okay. Now
I only
run
have one
along.
testicle.
Hey,
so
Run
You're
along.
just
a
Go play in the
Pharisee,
sandbox
man.
somewhere.
You're
The
a
boys.
Pharisee.
The
You would
boys are
never
talking.
understand the heart of Christ.
The
I
boys are
guarantee
discussing the meat of the word,
that. You're
Heffy.
soft. You're a soft Christian. You probably
All right,
like
get it out.
beat your wife
Get
or
it out.
something like that, or kick your dog,
Okay.
and
All
let's
I
go
ask,
ahead
guys, is when I
all
when I
kinds of
start
things that
talking,
would
you
do.
let me
You
talk.
probably-
So
we
I
know
can
you're a
direct
car
it to the
salesman,
Heffy,
aren't you?
conversation.
respect the host.
All you
Heffy,
do is
respect
you're
the
just a
host.
car salesman. That's all you are, is a car salesman.
Okay, Heffy.
Everybody knows
Respect
that
the
about
host.
you.
You've been refuted over and over again here.
You never
on
refuted me
open
one
mic
time.
after open
Never
mic,
proved your point.
discussion
That's why
after
you're running.
discussion. Heffy, you're a troll. You're clearly not serious.
That's right. Hey,
Yeah, you're
you know
clearly an
what?
atheist
And I
pretending to be
proved
a
you
Christian,
wrong.
trying to make
That's
Christianity look stupid.
Sure.
I mean,
listen.
the fact that I will say the Kansas City Chiefs, I'm not too fond of, but it's okay.
It's all right.
I'm just kidding.
Hey,
I'm
you know
just
what? We
teasing.
don't believe in once saved, always saved. You know, that bunch of demons over there.
Okay, let's get back to Daniel 9. Heffy's a
Okay,
waste of time.
so okay, yeah. The issue I have mainly is the he thing, of course, but I don't know how much you've really looked at what I'm saying about it. Like, hey, so this is what I want to do. This since I let you guys go on and all that, I just want to hear your response to what this guy says. It's a short little video, and he's a Baptist, and he's a futurist, and so I think the way he tries to deal with 27 makes the most sense. Like, I don't care if you don't take my view. I mean, I think you should. As far as I understand it with Daniel, I can't expound per se necessarily at this point on the seal things. That's one of the things on my list. That looking at Daniel 8 and 11 more closely and kind of working out what view I think is correct. Because
well, Jamie,
it's
let's
not-
do the. Hey, Jamie, I just wanted to,
Yeah.
because now I've been here for like almost an hour and a half. I was supposed to be prepping for my debate tomorrow on the same topic, and now it's almost going to be 3:30 in the morning. So I'm going to listen in. I'm going to let you and Chris talk, because I know I've been dominating. I do apologize if it got aggressive, Jamie. You know I love you. We had a good chat there. We get passionate, so I do want to apologize for that. It was fun though, and I will be listening in, but I really got to get to my. I got to finish up some prep for my debate tomorrow. So listen, I'll let you.
Okay, that's
and
fine.
Chris
All right, man. God bless.
Okay.
I'll see you later.
Okay. God bless.
Okay, so yeah, listen. So because I want Chris to see what as Chris says to this too. I was gonna make a video today, but I had to work today. So and do my own version of a similar type of thing that he describes with actual visuals here, and I probably still will, because I thought about doing like I'm gonna dunk on you guys, because your source is essentially and there's nothing wrong with this. Everybody uses sources, but Kent Hovind and Steven Anderson say the KJV. So this is my issue, just to lay it out real quick. It's like they say the KJV is perfect, and I'm yet to see someone, show me from an English grammar how that makes any sense with the he thing. I still think you can hold basically your same view without having to do that. I can see ways you could still understand everything essentially the same way without having to scramble the grammar of the King James, and because I think it is right in the King James. But Crimson Air had a question too. Crimson Air, I don't know if you didn't see, but on the screen here, this is my view, that the 70 years are continuous, and they start in 457 at the beginning of a Jubilee cycle. And the first 7 is a Jubilee cycle. It's 10 Jubilee cycles, which are, each Jubilee is 7 sabbatical year or Shemitah year cycle, okay? And so from 457 to 27 AD is the last 7 years of the last Jubilee, which is Christ fulfilling the new covenant. And then, I wanted to get at it with Standing for Truth, and that's fine. We can do it some other time. But because of the connotation that no one's talking about, and there hasn't been a lot either, that you got to realize is from Leviticus 24 through 26, explains this. It's tied to them being in captivity, them not keeping the sabbatical season. And Jesus says in the New Testament, forgive them 7 times 70. It's the same thing going on here. There's 70 years in captivity of Babylon, then 70 times 7. And so to say this allotted time can be broken up, and like the whole point was Jesus had to be back in the new covenant before the second temple was destroyed, and he did that. And this is the prophecy that allows for this, is what I would argue. And so to say that's not really talking about Christ, and like I get all these arguments about the surrounding chapters of Daniel, but this chapter, and that's what I wanted to look at too, is it's talking about Daniel praying about the Abrahamic unconditional covenant. It's the holy covenant that God promised to Abraham. And the New Testament is ripe with that language that. And so I guess you guys are still wanting to say, well, that's still a prophecy about Christ because he's cut off, and you guys say he's cut off after the 69th week or whatever. And fine. And then the last week just throws in the Antichrist right there. I don't think there's any reason to think that. The thing with Titus, you're seeing that chronologically, but it is Titus. Fine. I'm fine with that. It's because but Titus didn't destroy the city. The people, his army did. Titus actually told the army not to destroy the temple. That's the historical thing I remember reading. And they did anyways, and they were told not to. So he didn't even command it to do it. He commanded not to destroy it. And so, and the sentence structure and the grammar essentially demand that the subject of that sentence is the people. The prince who is to come is a qualifying statement, not the subject. It's saying, look, so what's in view? Noun is the people, subject people. And the army are the ones who destroyed it, not Titus. He is their commander. But the subject of the sentence grammatically is the people. Of the prince who is to come could have been of the people with big noses, or of, because they're Roman, or of the people who smell like cabbage, or the people of the group that has eagles on their flag, or it's telling you, it's just it's a descriptor of the subject, which is the people, which is the. So last I checked, he is not a proper pronoun for people. It would have to be a plural pronoun. And so the prince is to come.
What are you talking about?
I'm talking about
the people of the prince that shall come. So the people are going to destroy the temple, but he is still referring to that prince. I don't see how that, because the next verse says that he's going to confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. That's not the people confirming a covenant. That's him. Even though the people disobeyed his orders and destroyed this sanctuary, he is going to confirm a covenant.
So Titus
for many with 1 week.
The Roman general Titus is going to be resurrected to be the Antichrist. Is that what you're saying?
Okay, so here you're ignoring our theories here, which say that there is a partial fulfillment here. He's not doing all of it. There's a lot of this that Titus doesn't meet the fulfillment, but he does meet some of it. It's because it's a foreshadowing.
Right. No, I understand that that's your guys' view. I'm just saying that isn't. I think that I get what you're saying. This is one of the things I want to bring up to Standing for Truth, but this is one of the reasons I have a problem with it. Like, think about the original Jews reading this. Like, if they read and they thought that he was Titus, they wouldn't know until afterwards, and that's fine, until after it happened. But then they would be able to recognize that, oh, it's Rome, right? And it is, and I agree, it's Rome who is the little horn that's where the Antichrist is from in the end times. I agree with all that. I just think it's a stretch because, first of all, like I said, the grammar issue. But then even if I grant the grammar issue, you're still detaching the 70th week, which detaches it from the 490 years, which I think is also a problem. And then even then, like if the Jews were reading it, were they to think that how would they know it's a future? They're like experiencing the destruction of their temple, and Titus is the general who does it. And then like, wouldn't they just think it's talking about Titus destroying the temple? Like, how would they know to like detach it and put it into the future when it says like, here's a decree, count the time from here forward, and then they do, and it's Titus, apparently somehow, even though you wouldn't really be able to calculate it from the prophecy or the decree because there's intermittent periods of time you guys are putting in there. So there would be nothing to count because you wouldn't really know. So like there's no point to a decree. He might as well have just said, from the going forth of now, there'll be these periods, and the 7 doesn't really mean anything. And then there's 62. But there's a gap in between there, so it's really not 7 and 62. It's like that plus whatever, and then
we talked about this last night, that you can't even understand it without the Book of Revelation to complete it. It's not even attainable.
Okay. Well, I don't.
That's why in the Book of Daniel it says seal this book, and then in the Book of Revelation it says write it down, go publish it to all the 7 churches.
Seal the book, and that's an interesting question to bring up. I think I don't think that's talking about this prophecy in Daniel 9, but I think it's talking about
we can't understand any of the prophecies of Daniel virtually without the Book of Revelation. It's not possible to unlock that door.
Well, I think that, but don't you think what in the world was it received by Daniel for his people to recognize the going forth of the commandment until Messiah? They should at least that would have been recognizable to the Jews at the time of Jesus' first coming, don't you think? Right? I mean, isn't that the point?
They could understand parts of it, I'm sure. Yeah. So
like, because the whole point is like, because Daniel's like, how are we going to get right with you? And then in the prophecy, I think everybody agrees that I believe that at least verse 26 is talking about the destruction of the temple in the first century, obviously. And then so they're like, he must have been like, kind of like, it must have been confusing, sure. Like, what do you mean the temple will be rebuilt and we'll go back to Jerusalem, and then the Messiah is going to be at me and the temple is going to be destroyed, and this is good news, right? Like that might have been confused. I don't know exactly how they would have read that. So yeah, for sure there was like, it was concealed in some way, I would imagine. But one thing it wasn't concealed was that, and who they were looking for was Messiah, and I think they expected him to be perhaps the seed of the woman from Genesis even, right? So it's hard to know. No one seems to really know for sure exactly how much and what they thought he would do back in the first century before. But I suspect they thought he was more than Jews talk about today regarding what they think the Messiah will accomplish. Although they do think he'll accomplish peace on earth or whatever. But in other words, this prophecy has to primarily be about Christ, not about the Antichrist. I just don't. Well, I agree with you guys that there's an Antichrist in the future. I just think this prophecy is about them getting right with God, like Daniel prayed about. And then so, and because the Jubilee cycle thing, that's what I really wanted to talk to him about too, and point out to him the chance to even hear him talk about that. Like, it just seems like I get your perspective. I understand like your reasoning and all that. It's just like when it lands on like one of the decrees and it's perfectly in line with their Shemitah cycles and the Jubilee cycles, and then his ministry starts right at the beginning of the last 7, and then he's cut off 3.5 years later, and that confirms the new covenant according to Paul in Jeremiah 31. Like, these are like, I can't ignore that. and the primacy that the New Testament gives
All right,
to
then. So, verse 27 of Daniel 9, he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. In the midst of the week, cause the sacrifice and oblation to cease. You're saying that Christ fulfilled that verse?
Yeah, I'm saying the covenant that is the covenant is referred to in like Daniel 9:2 that Daniel's praying about, the everlasting covenant that he was promised to their father Abraham, the one that was unconditional. That's what he's asking about at the beginning of his prayer, and then he's repenting for the people because he knows they're about to come out of captivity. So I'm saying, yeah, the whole prophecy is about the decree until Messiah the Prince, and then we looking back know that he. So I would want to point out like we all agree that he brought the new covenant. Well, what's the new covenant or the renewed covenant? Well, it's the one promised to Abraham, and the one promised to Abraham. Because of the Mosaic covenant was calling for the people's death because they broke it, right? They didn't obey God, and because that one wasn't unconditional. But Jesus stepped in, the death of the testator, says Paul, right? So, a woman can't remarry unless the husband dies, that whole spiel of Paul. He's saying like they have to die, or the one who made the covenant has to die so that they can be set free from that covenant. And that's what it means about he ratified it and sprinkled many nations. And then it opened up the everlasting covenant through a promise to Abraham to all the nations. And then the main one, I guess we could look at this too, would be Jeremiah 31 talks about Jesus making a new covenant with, and then clearly Paul quotes that in Hebrews 8. He literally quotes that part of Jeremiah 31:31. It applies it to Jesus to say the Mosaic covenant is passing away. Soon to be gone.
Why do you have to blast me with 10 different things? Why can't we just why can't I respond to one at a time?
Well, let's go with that. I'm just saying Jesus. I'm saying it's Jesus because it's a big question, I'm saying, yeah, it's Jesus because it fits. That's the
okay. Well, then that's all you really had to say was yes, because it was more of a yes or no question.
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. What happens after the 3.5 years in the midst of the week and then nothing happens? You need a 7-year period.
Okay. So there's nothing in the New Testament that's like hyper specific, but I would say chronologically, historically, we know, like Jesus said, only go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. I understand that to mean, to fulfill the rest of the week. In other words, taking the covenant, the new covenant, and still concentrating on the Jews or the people of Israel. Until the 70th week is over. So even after Jesus died, they were like more concentrated on still giving the new covenant to primarily the Jews. And then about 3.5 years later is when Stephen dies and like Paul's called to go to the Gentiles. And then Peter has this vision and it says like all men are clean. That's talking about like, look, Peter was confused.
Okay, when were Christians getting beheaded and persecuted, an image standing up, a mark giving out? When was like Christ coming in the clouds? None of that. Literally none of it happened.
Oh, of course not. Yeah.
There wasn't even a temple that was destroyed during the 3.5 years. Like he ends the sacrifices, right, according to your theory, but then there's supposed to be a destruction of the temple.
Yeah, I agree with you. All that stuff that's in Revelation is future.
Okay, well then the last 3.5 years, that cannot be, the 70th week cannot be the ministry of Christ. If nothing significant at all happens in that latter 3.5 years, you compare it to the latter 3.5 years in any other portion of scriptures, the details that are given, it's not even like a partial fulfillment. Literally none of it is fulfilled.
Well, he confirms the covenant by his death. So the covenant's been ratified.
I'm talking about the latter 3.5 years, though, which involves the persecution, the erection of the image, the desolation of the temple, etc.
Right. So I think the reason from my perspective on Jesus doing the new covenant, from that perspective, I would say it didn't really care to give all these details about the last 3.5 years because I don't think that has to be about what's in Revelation, okay, or Daniel. It just has to be, I think this part of Daniel 9 is about Christ bringing the new covenant. Because Daniel 7 and 8 are about the 4 kingdoms leading up to Rome, and then when the Roman Empire is in charge, that's when Jesus comes. So it fits the chronology of Daniel 7 and 8 describing the.
I mean, maybe you should quit thinking and just believe in what the Bible says.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Oh, wait, I am. You need to do that. I appreciate that. That's fine. I agree. But the thing is, you're making connections that you don't need to make. And by the way,
they do need to be made in order to fit the correlation of the other verses that are directly related to the latter 3.5 years.
You know what's terrible about you? Okay, so I would say this is why I am disgusted with the idea that you take and remove the 70th week without the scripture justification for it is just because it mentions the 70th week separate does not tell you there's a time gap in there. First of all, it says it's 70 weeks. If the 70th week didn't come after the 69th, then and Jesus dies after the 69th week, you've got Jesus dying outside of the 70 weeks. Guess what? The things in Daniel 9:24 are said to be done in the 70 weeks, like what Jesus accomplished on the cross.
No, it actually says in verse 26, after 62 weeks.
Yeah.
So that's like
7 comes first.
62 weeks. So we're at the 69th week. Messiah is cut off. And
after the 62.
Yeah, after the 62 weeks. And then the temple, the sanctuary is destroyed, and the covenant is made. In the midst of the week, the sacrifices are ceased. So it's like all you see is Jesus dying, and then you approach this final week.
Well, yeah, because
after the destruction of the temple.
Did Jesus' death confirm the new covenant? Do you believe that?
His resurrection, rather, confirmed the new covenant.
Well, his death and resurrection. He can't resurrect without dying. You believe the blood, without the blood, there's no forgiveness of sins, right? I mean, that's a function to make. I agree with you. But that happened like 3 days later. So like we're talking in context of years here. Like, but you believe when he died, the old covenant ended, right? Or maybe when he rose, that's fine. But his death and resurrection is what brought in the new covenant, is it not?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm just saying, I think you guys should at least recognize that, like, you can render the years in order, and like the whole context of to begin the prophecy that he gives from the angel, he says 70 weeks are determined. He makes a block of 70, and then him breaking it up isn't enough for you to say there's like these time gaps in there. It's saying,
well, it is because unless you cook the numbers, you're not going to get a consecutive. What is it?
483 years.
The total number of years, that doesn't add up. Okay, and like you got to choose from several different decrees to start the 70 weeks, and then you have to go to 3 BC to line up with the birth of Christ, and then you have to add in like prophetic years and not literal years, and do all this kind of stuff just to make it work. When if you just break it up, then it fits perfectly. You can't put this 70th week as the ministry of Christ. It's because there's nothing happening after 3.5 years. When the Jewish-Roman War lasted 7 years, and in the midst of it, in the midst of the 7-year period, there was a desolation of the temple. Now, that is at least a partial fulfillment, whereas in the ministry of Christ, you don't have any fulfillments in the latter 3.5 years. Okay, there is no latter 3.5 years.
So you believe
it's not even said in the Bible explicitly that his ministry was 3.5 years.
Yep. Okay. But I think the first thing you said is absolutely incorrect. There is a decree in the Bible, and it is. And by the way, what's the point if we don't even know what the time space is? If there's these gaps in there and we don't really know how long they're, just so you can fit a type of a future Antichrist doing a future temple with sacrifices in it. So like Jesus dies, puts an end to the need for a sacrificial system, and then you put a gap in the time thing that's supposed to lead to Messiah the Prince, so that you can put this temple being apparently abomination in the temple around 70 AD, even though Jesus already said to desolate because the sacrifice made the sacrifices cease as far as being applicable to sin. I don't see, saying that when Titus destroys the temple, I would say, look, if them doing sacrifices in the temple in 70 AD is an abomination already. God doesn't want them to do that.
You have to have a literal destruction of the temple to meet the requirement for the 7-year period. In the middle, there's a literal destruction of the temple. Even Jesus said, not one stone shall be left upon another.
No, I agree with that. He predicted that the temple would be destroyed. I agree with that.
It has to occur in the 7-year period, though.
Why?
Because that's what the Bible says in other chapters, which you're you're considering them to be like irrelevant because you want to focus on this one chapter. You don't want to go to charts or other chapters.
No, I want to keep Jesus in the 70 weeks so that the things that need to be determined in the 70 weeks, like putting an end to sin, making atonement for our sin, and bringing in everlasting righteousness, confirming the everlasting covenant, him being anointed as the most holy. And he said he is the temple. In 3 days he'll raise it up. He's the temple. We're
certain
his
things
body.
that even in that though, Jamie, where it says that he's going to make an end of transgression, all of that stuff. Some of that has not been fulfilled.
Okay. I just want everybody to remember this, because I get attacked like Adventists don't think Jesus made atonement for their sins, really. They think it's like not fulfilled until the future. That is like one of the biggest things that I get attacked for. And I just want to, on a note right here, and that's fine, because I agree with you in a sense. Like, yeah, we still sin, blah, blah, blah. But I would still want to say strongly that Jesus put an end to sin. How? He made the necessary sacrifice to take away sin. Did he bring in everlasting righteousness? Well, we still sin. No man. He became a human, and he never sinned. So he fulfilled the law as a human. And so, yes, he did bring in everlasting righteousness. He did put an end to sin. And if we're in him, we will be saved. That's what I want to say. But to be fair, I agree with the concept, which I don't think most people would usually be willing to. I'd love to just beat you up to death with it, and say, you don't really believe Jesus made atonement. You don't have a savior. And I've hinted at that in my anger, but I'm just saying, like, I don't want to hear people say Adventists don't believe in the atonement for Jesus when we argue that Jesus, absolutely, this verse is about him bringing the new covenant and fulfilling Daniel 9:24 in every sense that anybody needs to do anything to bring the new everlasting covenant, which saves us from our sin. Jesus did it, and he did it back then, and he fulfilled it according to the scriptures right on time. And I just like the end for me. So I just, don't tell me I don't believe in the atonement or I don't blah, blah, blah. Like, I'm arguing that Jesus is absolute thing, and the Antichrist has nothing to do with it. So thank you for letting me just get that off my chest. Go ahead. If you want to say anything else, I got to go to bed.
No,
But
I didn't.
I appreciate you.
I wouldn't make that accusation. So
I know you wouldn't. Yeah, I didn't mean to direct that at you. It's so ironic though, because a lot of the people that did come at me about it, called me a heretic and sacrilege and all this crap. And it's like, and then I'm trying to tell them I think Jesus fulfilled this, and they're telling me no, Jesus didn't do it. That 70th week is the Antichrist, and it's just like,
I think what would help you out is that you leave the Seventh-day Adventist behind.
Why would I leave them when they have it right? You guys have it wrong. I still don't agree with you guys, but I mean,
well, they're bad people. Okay, they're wicked as hell.
Oh, okay. Thank you. All four of my grandparents that are dead died Adventists, so I guess they're going to burn in hell forever. But
They definitely are if they believe the salvation doctrine of the Seventh-day Adventist Church.